Well, my friends, the tables have turned. Performance actually matters, and it seems that some companies are starting to take it seriously. Now, this might sound insane, but stick with me. If you try to boot Battlefield 6 on your PS4, you'd be pretty silly because it doesn't run on a PS4. One of the reasons being, it just doesn't have enough horsepower. But of course, over on PC, well, if you're below the minimum specs, you can still try and run Battlefield 6, and where it gets interesting is, loads of you did. According to the devs, a substantial number of people in the Battlefield 6 beta were running the game below minimum specs, and even though that was the case, there weren't really complaints about performance going on. In fact, I saw praise over performance, a rare thing for an early Battlefield game. So, how does that work? What's going on? And how did EA, of all companies, decide to cater to older PCs for their flagship game, even going so far as to kill one of the features that the industry told us we should be caring about years ago? Now, detail is the whole reason why I started this channel. Detail matters, and it also matters in gameplay. So take a look at this. This is what happens when you hit an enemy in War Thunder, who have sponsored today's video. And it's the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made. It's free on PC, consoles, and mobile. It's simulated and modeled to the last detail, and not just because it's neat, though it is, but because it's better gameplay. In War Thunder, you fight vehicles, you don't fight health bars. And they've got over 2,500 vehicles. You're going from biplanes and Mark I tanks from the First World War, all the way up to the Abrams and the F-15. And as a history nut, this stuff tickles me. That's why War Thunder is impressive to me. It's all the little things, the sounds, VFX, the X-ray damage system, that all comes together to create an immersive, authentic experience, and unlike others, an approachable one because of their arcade simulator and realistic gameplay modes. And just like the subject of today's story, Gaijin have actually put massive effort into performance, so this will run on low-end systems as well, and anyone can play for free. That's on PlayStation, Xbox, PC, iOS, and Android. Hell, I still remember flying in VR for the first time. It was a bit of a mind blow. So join up for free using my links, and on PC or console, if you're a new player or you haven't played in 6 months, you will get a massive bonus pack of 100,000 Silver Lions, 7 days premium, Eagle of Valor Decorator, premium vehicles, and a 50% XP and Silver booster. And of course, a big thanks to War Thunder. It's free to play on PC, Xbox, PS5, iOS, Android, all the things. And now is the perfect time to give it a shot. And if you're new or just haven't been back in 6 months, claim your massive free bonus pack on your PC or console using my link. What matters to Battlefield has clearly shifted. Back in 2018, Battlefield 5 was Nvidia's flagship for ray tracing. So much so that Nvidia started trying to tell us we shouldn't be caring about the raw horsepower of our graphics cards, no, that we should be caring about RTX ops, a benchmark they invented to make themselves look good and sell us that we needed a new thing. Now, the ray tracing demos look stunning, but they basically were unplayable. The hit to frame rate is absolutely insane. And now, in 2025, we see that Battlefield 6 is launching with no ray tracing. None of it. And they don't even have plans to add it later. And as it turns out, this is not them panicking about their performance. Technical director Christian Bruhl told comicbook.com, of course, the place to go for enthusiast PC gaming news, that this was an early choice. That they early on chose not to even bother with ray tracing because their goal is not purely graphical fidelity, it's performance. And that is a humongous change for Battlefield. You see, every PC launch since Battlefield 2 has gone poorly. And that's going a long way back. Yet, Battlefield 3's graphics were so impressive that even now, in 2025, many years later, NoClip is still making documentaries about it. Now, there's nothing wrong with graphical fidelity. It looks gorgeous, and the good people at Digital Foundry can pay their bills by covering graphical powerhouses and seeing what performance is like. But Battlefield 6's design choices are showing us something new, that there is now a balance between looking good and playing good, and it seems that these companies are realizing that even though stunning graphics and amazing screenshots, amazing looking trailers can sell copies, maybe it seems that if you want players to stick around, you need to think about playability. And if you want proof, just look at dragging. It's the most mimetic feature in Battlefield 6. But what if I told you it was meant to be in Battlefield 5, which was 7 years ago? Yeah, I feel old too. Now, 5 months after launch, EA confirmed that the body dragging was not happening, and they blamed, quote, complex and long animations. The conspiracy theory? that it didn't look good enough for Battlefield 5. Perhaps it was too buggy, but it very much seemed that fidelity won over gameplay. But now, what we're seeing is a completely different story. From Battlefield 2042 to Battlefield 6, the minimum requirements saw marginal increases. Graphics cards and CPUs went up one generation, but are 3 behind the new 2025 cards. RAM hit 16 gigs. But here's what matters. Battlefield 6's minimum settings are effectively Battlefield 2042's recommended settings. And it's not much of a leap, right? You'll get 30 FPS at 1080 guaranteed, but, at least it will run. And apparently, it might run below those specs as well, which is why this whole thing kind of hit the news. Brill, the guy we quoted earlier, told Eurogamer something real interesting, that many people were playing at or around the minimum spec, and he called it a meaningful percentage. But emphasizing that even more, he also said a number of people were playing below the minimum spec, and that this is something that the team actually considered throughout development. And here's basically how he described the process in this. The teams build maps. Then, artists and technical artists collaborate with one goal: to make them more performant. And the idea, in his words, is that whether you're in the minimum spec or the ultra spec, that you are going to get the experience that they're targeting. Now, of course, what matters most to players? Well, that this target is all native. That it's hitting 30 FPS and 60 FPS actually without DLSS. And that is the thing that I think is major, because I've seen the comments. I've seen people feel almost depressed that optimization is at the stage where we need DLSS for a game to hit what we consider to be playable. And knowing that's in the PC gaming zeitgeist, the Battlefield studio devs clearly know all the right things to say. They talk about DLSS and other performance tech as options, but that they will not be required to hit targets. Instead, as Brill puts it, they test the systems above and below the minimum specs, and he says their goal is this: what we can hit, what we need to hit from a business perspective, and that was to capture a wide audience on PC. So essentially, a developer saying what we have all been saying for a long-ass time, that what we actually would care about is the playability of our game, and it seems they are putting that first. Not some silly partnership with Nvidia trying to make us think that we need all the RTX ops that we can get. With how jaded most of us are to the AAAs, that all may sound like a bit of a surprise. But there's one word that stands out in these interviews. It's the thing that we all need to pick up on, and that word is early. Now, we already know that Battlefield 6 got more time, resources, and staff than literally ever before. It even seems that almost too much of that happened, where they actually got more and more resources, even at the expense of creating some tension between the studios, and we covered that in a video a while ago. But now it seems that a good performance goal was set early on in this project as a big priority. And that means the time, resources, and staff were dedicated to meeting that target, rather than say what tends to happen, which is, okay, we've done a bunch of development, now we're in the optimization stage, we have only so many months or weeks until we're going to ship. Oh shit, which seems to be what goes on in many of the companies. Looking at you, Capcom and Monster Hunter. And this is all specifically on PC. And at this point, everyone knows that optimizing for consoles is easier than PC, but PC's big for Battlefield, and it seems they've actually recognized that in having PC come first and be the focus from the start. And thinking about contrast, I mean, Capcom's CEO just admitted that they built Monster Hunter Wilds' business model around the PlayStation 5. And that really does reinforce our theory that the PC ports were less of a focus and more something that they did because they needed to hit financial targets in time. Meanwhile, Tim Sweeney actually recently blamed Unreal Engine 5 stuttering on publishers and developers. I suppose it's Tim basically saying, a bad workman blames his tools. Basically, Tim's response was that you guys aren't working on lower-end PC optimization early enough in the process. And I think he's right. Now, of course, EA does have some advantages here. Unlike Unreal Engine 5, Frostbite is their bespoke engine with lots of in-house support, and it's completely designed to make games like Battlefield. Not things like Dragon Age. Unlike Capcom, where RE Engine seems amazing for Resident Evil and a little bit less good for, say, Monster Hunter and Dragon's Dogma. But if Frostbite alone was enough, maybe 2042 wouldn't have been such a shit show. So no, the point is that even compared to past Battlefield entries, things have changed. And unlike with 2042, teams are not building a new engine version midstream. And unlike Battlefield 5, resources aren't being split off to do the ray tracing implementation. And that sort of thing might be the key. That EA started from the bottom because working top-down has got diminishing returns. Take a look at Battlefield 6's recommended specs. They're a 5-year-old graphics card for a guaranteed 60 FPS. The minimum specs need a 6-year-old card for 30 FPS, but EA only guarantees those benchmarks, and clearly there are options for older and weaker cards. And that's how unsupported cards still run the game, of course. That's amazing for players, but it's also smart business for EA. Battlefield 6 won't be available on, say, the PS4 or the Xbox One. Old legacy systems that still have a massive install base, which up until recently, developers have still been hamstringing their games to support. Now, like with Capcom, EA leadership probably gambled that console adoption would reach a point by 2025 where losing older generations would not hurt their sales. Not every game can make that bet. Take EA FC26. It needs those sales for the legacy consoles, and Capcom is blaming lower Monster Hunter World sales on the PS5's costs and some slow uptake. But compared to them, EA have hedged their bets differently this time around. They basically couldn't justify making a performant, modern Battlefield for 12-year-old consoles, yet it still needs to be their flagship game targeting humongous sales. So what they could justify is making sure PC performance would at least allow as many people as possible to play at acceptable rates, and that would cover any console sales gaps. Of course, it being important that Battlefield historically has massive roots on PC. So they invested the time, resources, and money to do it right from the start. And that's the big point here. Publishers have got to actively commit to this early in development. Like Brill said, quote, "What we need to hit from a business perspective is to capture a wide audience on PC. It's been super critical. And yes, if PC players aren't happy, they'll tell you, as EA very much knows. Just look at their last Star Wars game, and of course, take a look at Battlefield 2042's launch. And that's why Battlefield Labs appears to have been kind of essential here, because they've got a wide range of data from a massive number of rigs in their earlier testing of this game. And that's why early testing matters so much more than a marketing beta. How many times have we seen marketing betas that are, well, pretty close to launch, and where you know that the big problems aren't going to be fixed? That's why EA actually committing to do this shit earlier on seems to matter. And if we're lucky, then maybe, just maybe, this could mark a turning point. 100 million players, that's a lot of people, and that's a leaked target for Battlefield 6's success. Now, we don't know when they want that number of players or how they think they'll get it, but consider this. PlayStation 5 sales just topped 80 million. Xbox sales sit at around 30 million for the newer gen. That would require an unprecedented adoption rate for, say, what a third-party game would expect. So obviously Battlefield needs PC. As, you know, is right, naturally. Most of us, I'd reckon, started this franchise on PC. That means they need to ensure as many PC players as possible can play this thing with as few complaints as possible. And here's the irony with this. Smaller games don't need that adoption level, but they are the ones that can afford to have a smaller audience. But EA wants Battlefield as a major revenue pillar for EA games again. That only comes with scale, and that scale means something specific. It means that EA's flagship video game is not designed to be ray-traced and stunningly pretty first. No, it's designed to play well first, and for more people. And if that works, then maybe more publishers will actually adopt earlier PC performance targets as a requirement. Maybe more will, well, listen to Tim Sweeney when he says, guys, you need to do this shit earlier on. You can say many things about Tim, but you can't say he doesn't know how development works. And while players like me and you may be the big beneficiary here, do you know who this would also be a big win for? Well, engineers, technical artists, the people who far too often are crunched out of their goddamn mind trying to stop a disaster in the weeks before a release. No, here, we've had a beta way before launch that people have ran well below minimum spec. Man, that makes my inner PC gamer very goddamn happy indeed. Let's hope it becomes the new normal. And if you want to learn how devs over at Xbox are trying to have Microsoft's bullshit not become the new normal, watch this video next.